You know how fresh this podcast is? That fresh.
Get out.
Hello and welcome to the Proclamation Podcast. I am your host, Luke Nolan, and I am here with the indefatigable Maddie Brown.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yep.
So we are a storytelling podcast. We're here to hear your stories. We are here to share genuine conversations like the ones that we have across the bar, and Maddie has graciously agreed to share her story with us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. I'm stoked.
Maddie, you work for Hume Lake Christian Camps.
That is correct.
You are a director of
program.
What does that mean?
It's kind of a multifaceted thing. So I work for Hume New England in Western Massachusetts. And my job changes throughout the year, but primarily running our winter and summer camps for middle school and high schoolers.
So Hume started as a California-based camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kings Canyon, east of Fresno.
Yep, up in the Sequoias.
I love how people like to say it's by Fresno, and I'm like, it's not by Fresno.
It's like 2 hours outside of Fresno, but it's the closest grocery store. So yeah, by Fresno.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I should know that because I wanted batteries, and then it said go to Fresno.
Yep.
So you primarily work at the New England campus. Tell me a little bit about how that came about and what are kind of the differences between the two camps?
Yeah, like how Hume New England came about or how I came about working
New England
there.
one.
Yeah, so Hume New England has been a location since 2012, but the board of Hume had been praying for a New England location prior to that, like years prior. And then I'm not sure the entire story, to be honest with you. I know there were a couple different properties that were opportunities that they were looking at, but the location we ended up getting was, in years prior, had been two separate camps. So one of them was like a Jewish retreat center, and the other one was similar to what we are, a youth camp for students.
Okay.
And then Hume, those two eventually became one, and then in around 2012, the camp that was running it, they just weren't doing great. And so Hume stepped in and said, hey, we'd like to try to run a camp out here. They ran like a tester camp for a week. And then the Lord just made it really clear that that's where Hume was supposed to be. And so we've been out there since 2012 officially.
And when did you go out there?
I got out there January of 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the first time we ever ran a winter camp there.
And did they ask you to go, or did you like pursue that opportunity?
So it's kind of a funny thing. I worked for Hume Lake in 2015 as like a counselor. And so worked there, loved it.
Did you go to the camp as a high schooler?
I didn't go in high school. I went in elementary school to like wagon train. So you sleep in covered wagons.
It's like the
coolest experience ever for like a fourth grader. And then worked there and made a bunch of friends. One of my friends who I had met in California ended up at the Massachusetts location. And he called me one day and was like, hey, would you be interested in coming out here? We need someone for the winter. And I was like, yeah, I can go out for a season. And then never left. So, yeah.
For those of you watching this in the year 3000, 2020 has been pretty crazy. And
slightly.
Camps are one of the many normal summer activities that we didn't get to participate in because of COVID pandemic. So tell us kind of like, how did you navigate that?
Yeah.
Maybe some of your personal like mic dropping ideas that you had to like get through. Like, how did you guys survive that?
It was a roller coaster. And in Massachusetts, so it's interesting because our main location is in California, and then we're in Massachusetts. So while we function in a lot of the same ways when it comes to like government orders, they're different. And so California,
a lot smaller population.
Yeah, way smaller population. Yeah. Just we have some things that we're able to do because we're a smaller camp. But our California location got shut down for camps for youth, essentially, prior to us being shut down. So California, Hume made the decision, Hume Lake, that they weren't going to run summer camp as per usual, and they were going to do family camp, which ended up being like super cool thing. Families got to come up. They could
individual
stay.
families. They're already together anyways.
Exactly. It was like the perfect thing because like families don't have to socially distance from each other, and they can come do camp's great because everything's outdoors. You do outdoor activities. It's awesome. And then in Massachusetts, we kind of had hope longer that we could run camp. So it was like a weekly thing of like, okay, maybe we can do normal camp. That's not going to happen. So what if we split our entire camp into 2 separate groups? So like, let's make a new schedule for like 2 group camp, scratch that, make one for a 3 group camp. And so it was just like constantly adapting.
Was it super stressful or was it like,
it was like so stressful.
Let's take the challenge?
It was both. And it was interesting because it was like all based on like things we heard from our local board of health and what other camps were maybe trying to do. So it was all like on speculation, and none of it we were even sure if it was going to happen.
Is there like camp camaraderie? Like we have the coffee shop culture. We'll share cups and do competitions.
Totally. It's
so you know what's going on with other camps around.
Kind of, yeah. So we try to be like connected with other camps as much as possible. And the East Coast has a ton of camps over there. So it's helpful to like know what other people are doing, what works, what model doesn't work. And then there's like nationwide camp collaborations, which are pretty cool.
Okay.
And so, yeah, but it was just like constantly every week there was like a new thing. And then the governor ended up shutting down camps, overnight camps for
in Massachusetts.
All of 2020 in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so that was like a clear, all right, this isn't going to happen answer from the governor. And then we spent some time trying to figure out if we could do any sort of like family camp things over there. If we could run essentially guest groups and churches could bring families or whatever. We tried a bunch of different things, but it was just clear that nothing was going to work in what COVID required, as well as holding up to a standard that we wanted to uphold for an experience for our guests. And so they basically just like mothballed our camp in Massachusetts. So 2 people are still there, just keeping camp running and going.
Keeping the lights on.
Exactly. And then a bunch of us were sent to California to help with the summer camp with families, as well as some like winter activities.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Before we move on, I wanted to ask you to describe camp from like a camper's experience. Cause I think a lot of people watching probably never got the opportunity to go to summer camp, or they maybe went to summer camp and had a bad experience and never went again. So like, what is like the average, or maybe you could even from there go into what is the ideal camp experience that you guys are trying to provide?
Yes.
Like, what is a camper experience and what should they experience?
Totally. So it's a little bit different for us in Massachusetts than in California, just because we're way smaller.
Tell me about Massachusetts. That's way more exciting. California's boring.
Our model at Hume New England is a little different than some other East Coast camps, because the ideal model for us is that students come up with a church. And because one of our biggest
their
goals,
church says we're coming to the camp.
Exactly. As Hume, we want to partner with the local church. And so we think one of the best and ideal scenarios is for a student to come up to camp with a church, because for us, while we are so excited to have them on camp, it's just a week of camp, but their church gets to go home with them, walk alongside them, and do life with them the rest of the year. So while they come up to camp and have this mountaintop experience, it's just 7 days out of the year.
It's like learning another language, but then you have nobody to talk in that language with.
Exactly. So we want them to go home with leaders that they trust, that they feel like they can talk to, that are encouraging them and walking alongside them and just doing life with them. So that is like the main goal for us. While we do have some students who come up just as individuals without a church, can still be a super fun model. But yeah, camp is so fun. And for us, we want kids to come up, eliminate all distractions, like no cell phones. They're not worried about school. They're not worried about...
Is it way up in the boondocks? Do you even have cell service? Where's the location kind of?
For Massachusetts, they'll call it the mountains. Like for people from California, you just think it's a big hill.
Not like mountains to us.
No. We're not that high in elevation. We do get a lot of snow. And it's really funny because kids will be like, man, it's such a long drive. And you're like, how long was it? And they're like, a whole 2 hours. Whereas people in California, like 6 hours is like nothing to drive for camp. So
you're not even halfway across the state yet.
Exactly. So it's sweet. They come up and we want them to just not worry about their normal everyday things and just come up to camp and be a kid, just be surrounded by creation, have fun, and just have an opportunity to experience the Lord in a very intimate setting.
What do you mean by experience the Lord?
Great question. I think for every kid, it's different. We get kids who come up who have gone to church their whole life, who know every worship song, they know all the Bible verses. And for some of them, like, experiencing the Lord is like a regular thing, but to do it in creation, to do it in a setting where their phone isn't going off and they're not worried about chores or issues at home or school or homework, just to have a moment to be still and silent before the Lord, is just so valuable for them to be able to not have the constant sound of the world and just to be able to be silent, I think is huge and really valuable for some students. And then for other kids, we get kids who come to camp and they didn't even know that Jesus was a real man. And so for them to hear Bible stories and hear real things, and know for the first time that this is a real book and it's not just some made up mythology, but it's actual history. And so I think it's different for every kid, which is awesome because they come in and while they all have the same schedule and maybe they're doing the same things throughout the day, experiences can be completely different depending on the kid.
Gotcha. So it's learning the man behind the legend.
Exactly.
Cool. What is your first coffee memory? My
first coffee memory. Oh man.
Dig deep.
Digging deep. Ooh, my first coffee memory, I'm gonna take a sip of coffee right now, is probably my grandfather.
Oh, real good.
That sip. My grandfather,
Hi,
my
buddy.
dad's dad. We called him Papa. He every morning.
Your dad's dad.
My dad's dad. When we would have sleepovers at their house, when we woke up, there was always a pink box of donuts on the counter without fail. Every time. Never wake up without a box of pink box of donuts. So he would leave bright and early before we woke up, get the donuts and be back. And then he'd be sitting at the kitchen table with a black mug, very specific in my mind, a black mug with a black cup of coffee. And that was his cup of coffee. And he always would make fun of us if I came in the house with like an iced latte or whatever. And he'd say, why'd you spend $5 on that? He's all, I pour my coffee in the morning. And then if it gets cold by the afternoon, I put some ice cubes in it. And there's my iced coffee. So that's my first vivid memory. He always had a cup of black coffee.
Grandpa drinking coffee. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the people that we love drinking coffee is often our first memory. Mm-hmm. That's what's been shared a lot.
Yeah. I now have a black mug that I love using because it always reminds me of him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What kind of person do you think that he was that he enjoyed black coffee? Oh. Why is that?
I think even if he liked milk and sugar in his coffee, he never would have told anybody that. Just because that's the way it was. He was a man and he drank black coffee and
like a man. What was that thing you sent me on Instagram that be a man?
Oh my gosh, it's my new favorite Instagram account.
Okay, so I don't know anything about that guy or anything. Tell me about what is going on there.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I ended up in like a rabbit trail the other day.
I feel like he's like a famous MMA fighter or an Olympic athlete or something.
I think he's just a man from Boston and he's got his like thick Boston accent and he...
Do you know his name?
I don't know his actual name.
Great.
But
we are uneducated.
I'm just love his videos and he talks about how to be a man. My favorite was never show your feet, be a man. And it's hilarious because he just like makes a comment, says be a man, and then there's like the guys in the background filming it, giggling, and it's quality.
This is slightly dark, but I recently had a close friend tell me that I said, hey, what's going on? And he said, well, my wife and I aren't doing very good. And we brought up divorce, which is very sad. And I've been talking to him and I hope that they work it out. And I believe that they can. Marriage is very hard. So anyone who expects less of marriage, be ready. It's very difficult, but it's the best. It's like climbing Mount Everest. It's the best, most difficult thing you could do. And everyone should do it if they have the opportunity and they feel led. But he was telling me about that, and it was an unexpected conversation about his marital problems. And the next day you sent me that, and so I started scrolling through a couple, and I probably had clicked on like 3, so I kind of got the gist.
Yeah.
Basically, for those who haven't seen, they will show like a clip of like almonds and peanuts and walnuts and say, eat nuts, don't have allergies, be a man. And it's this older gentleman very
straight
emphatically saying that. Yeah. Trying not to laugh.
It's so good.
And then there's like a crew behind him who like laughs.
Just giggling.
Yeah. So probably the third or fourth one I clicked on was, don't talk about your marriage problems to your coworkers. Just get a divorce. Be a man.
No.
And I was like, oh,
the timing
this
of
is
that.
just way too, and
too real.
I could not believe the timing of that.
Wow.
Talk about your marital problems and don't get a divorce. That's
Be
being
a man.
That's being a real man. Whatever that means, be a man. So my next question for you is, how do you navigate balancing because you live there where you work
in Massachusetts?
How do you balance your work life, personal life? Is it super integrated?
Yeah.
Is that a difficulty for you? Are you really good with boundaries?
It's interesting. It kind of depends on the season, because during like winter camp and summer camp, my work life and my off time is camp. It just is the reality of our schedule and what we do. And for those seasons, it's really fun because we bring in for summer, we bring about 30 like part-time staff in, and winter is probably about 15 to 20.
Do you have to manage some of those people?
I do, yeah. So
sweet.
It's really fun because usually they come in and they bring in this like new energy and excitement, and they're just like pumped to be doing camp. And so I work with them, and then in our off time, it's like hanging out. We'll go floating down the river, like movies. Sometimes I go into the city. So it is a balance for sure in the camp seasons where it's kind of just we're all into it. In the off seasons, the people we work with is our community. And so there is like a learning curve and a balance to like, oh, we work together all day and maybe I was frustrated with you about something, but at the end of the day, we still need community and like overcoming some of those things and learning how to be like coworkers with someone as well as friends. And so it is definitely a balancing act for sure. And some days you want to do it and some days you don't.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But
so this is not the first place far from home where you've lived. Where else have you lived?
I lived in York, England for a short time. I did a semester abroad there.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
Where's York in England, for those who don't know?
It's
because I know everything about England, obviously.
Liar. It's a little bit more north. It's in Yorkshire County. I'm going to be honest with you. I've recently learned this about myself. I'm really bad at geography.
Oh, great segue.
Like, really bad. So I was like 2 hours from Manchester, maybe like 2.5, 3 hours from London.
But which direction? Nobody knows.
No one will ever know. The world may never know.
You told me recently about an app game.
Oh my gosh,
thing.
yeah.
That's what I want to segue to.
Yes.
We got to tell the world about this.
We have to tell the world because it's so fun. So it's called GeoGuessr, and it's basically a game.
GeoGuessr.
I think that's
2
what
G's.
it's called.
Okay.
And it like drops you essentially like in Google Maps in locations all across the world, and you can just like spin it around and see like a full 360
like a street view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of where you're at, and then you have to guess on a world map where you are. There's like no clues, nothing. It just drops you.
And you can't move around.
You can't move around. You can spin and see all around you.
360 view.
That's it. So
can you zoom in a little bit?
You can zoom in. And so like sometimes it's a little bit easier because you're like, okay, I can zoom in and I think that's like a New York license plate. So I'm guessing it's New York.
Gotcha.
Sometimes they'll be like in a city so you can see like billboards and writing and you're like, oh, that looks Korean, I guess. Yeah. I'm in Korea. So but then other times it just drops you on like a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. So then you're like looking at the landscape and the types of trees and plants. And you just have to guess where you are. And it's oddly satisfying.
Have you gotten any close or been way off?
So definitely for sure I've been way off. There's a couple times when it was
continents off.
Oh yeah, like way off. Like I was like, oh, this looks like Oklahoma, and it was like Australia. And
that actually sounds spot on.
And because it's like a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and it's sunny outside, and you're like, this could be anywhere.
Totally could be the same two places.
My best one, it like dropped me in a city, and I was like, okay, this looks Korean, because the writing looked Korean. So I was like, I'm just
you
gonna
can tell
guess.
the difference between like Korean and Chinese.
In my brain, I was like, this looks Korean. I don't actually know the difference, but my brain for some reason knew. Wow. And I just like guessed somewhere in Korea, and I was 3 miles off of the actual location.
So do you just tap your finger where you think you are?
Mm-hmm. So you can like zoom in on the map. You can get like really complicated with it too. Like my friend plays and he's like, okay, so it's kind of mountainous and there's like water, so it's probably near a lake. So he'll like look for like the water, bodies of water. That's too much for me. I kind of just like pick one and see what happens. But 3 miles off in a country I've never been to.
Pretty damn good.
I was very impressed
with myself. How many miles is it to go around the earth?
Have no idea.
Fact check that. Media team. Okay, so you lived in New York. Have you lived anywhere else?
Nope.
Traveled anywhere else?
Traveled. Yeah, I've traveled a little bit. I mean, I feel like most people.
Have you ever been to Asia?
I've never been to Asia. No.
You should go.
Been to I mean, I feel like every California kid like goes to Mexico at some point in life, whether it's like a mission trip, whatever.
I haven't been, oddly enough, but
really?
I never been to Canada
You've been
or
to
Mexico.
Africa, but you've never been to our neighbors.
Nope.
Okay. Well, I've been to Canada and Mexico.
Where'd you go in Canada?
Montreal. It's like a 5-hour drive from where we live in Massachusetts.
Oh,
so
yeah. Okay.
Me and some friends were like, hey, let's go to Canada.
Did you see Jordan Peterson when you were there?
No. I don't know who that is.
I think he's in Montreal.
Who's Jordan Peterson?
He's a famous like podcaster, philosopher, speaker guy.
Cool. Also didn't realize how French speaking it was there. That was a learning experience. Everywhere like you go, they like start with French and you'd be like, oh, I don't, and they're like, oh, you're English speaking. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So learned that.
I saw a very disturbing but also interesting video where it was during some very strict COVID restrictions that were placed by the Canadian government. And there was a family of Spanish-speaking people who had gathered a large family gathering, and their neighbors called the cops. So the cops were yelling at the family in French. And the family was yelling back in French, but then speaking Spanish to each other, saying stuff probably like they're taking Billy off to the jail.
Oh my gosh.
And Billy's yelling back to his family in Spanish and then turning and speaking to the officers in French, and then the officers are speaking French, and then the Spanish grandma is yelling in Spanish, and it was just like this huge cacophony, and there was a little bit of English thrown in there, like F this kind of a thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Wow, that sounds multicultural.
It was very, I never thought about that scenario happening, but I also never thought about people going to jail for having too large family gatherings either.
For having a party.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
I mean, party? Yes. But family gathering?
True.
No.
Valid.
I've almost gone to jail for having too big of a party.
What?
Back in the day.
Was it a rager? Did your neighbors call? Elaborate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like in an apartment, 15 people.
Whoa.
Alcohol was involved.
Wow.
Yeah. Back when I was in trouble.
How old were you?
22.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Many ages ago. So living in those different places and doing similar work, what have you realized about like how you need to adjust your approach based on the people that you're working with and where you're at?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting.
Or maybe you have people from different places come to you, you know, at camp.
Like people that I work with? What do you mean?
like serving people?
Yeah, that's good. I think it's interesting because I didn't realize how different people on the West Coast were from people on the East Coast. People on the West Coast are very like happy, friendly, upfront, but don't necessarily have a good long game. And East Coast people are a little bit harder to break through, but once you do, like you're in for life. And so that's been an interesting so loyal. So it's been an interesting like process of like learning that approach. And I think I'm more similar to East Coast people where I have a horrible first impression. I'm just like awkward and shy and don't know what to do with my hands.
Gotcha.
But I'm really good at the long game. And so that's been cool to see, just like developing relationships with like people at our churches and making friends out there has been really cool. But I think people just want to be like met where they're at, and they want to feel seen. And so I think at the heart of it, like that's what people really want. And so trying to like know people well is, I just think, really important because
how do you show them that you're doing that?
I love to cook for people. I think
awesome.
I love food, whether it's good or not, it's good to eat. And I think Jesus ate with people for a reason. And I think it really levels people because you're like sitting at the same table together, you're eating together. It kind of like breaks down walls.
As you speak.
Good call. And so I think, and coffee does a similar thing of like making a cup of coffee for someone. It just like breaks down some of people's walls, and just puts you on the same level. So where you can have like a genuine conversation, you can learn about someone, you can hear them and like allow them to feel seen in that moment. And I think feeding people's bellies feeds their souls.
If you feel secure physically, you may feel secure to open up in other ways.
Exactly.
There was another question I was going to ask you that you spurred up in me, but I forget what it was now.
What was it that I said that spurred it?
I don't remember. I'm trying to remember now.
Eating.
Yeah, I probably had to do with eating.
Seen.
I don't know, I started thinking about the hamburger that I'm going to eat after this, and I forgot about everything else.
Cheeseburgers are my favorite food.
So, we've been hiding something this entire podcast for those who don't know us. Yeah.
Secret.
That although many people like to, put me up on this pedestal as this, really famous podcaster and owner of a coffee shop and like, entrepreneur extraordinaire. My real claim to fame is being your brother-in-law.
That is actually true. Yeah.
Tell me about your sister.
Where to start? I mean, her.
Then why am I asking you?
I know, right? Oh, my sister, my best friend and my worst enemy. What do you want to know about her?
You guys are like...
Our relationship. Our telepathy.
Yeah, tell me about that. That actually is magical.
It is really magical. And I don't entirely understand how it works, but I know what she's thinking and feeling before she knows what she's thinking and feeling.
Is it reciprocal? She does the same too?
She does. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more in tune to her. She now has a baby, so obviously her telepathy is a little distracted. So...
Yes, it is.
Yes. But
yeah. How do you like being an aunt?
Oh, I love it. It's dope. It's sweet. I'm like, oh, we got a cool baby. We hang out. Then she spits up and I give her back to you guys. So it's a sick deal. Yeah, you can give her right back. I love it. She's the coolest.
She's going to be something else.
She's going to be
I feel like all of this stuff that I'm doing is going to be so insignificant compared to what she will do.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah. I mean, that one... Instagram posts where she just like blew up and
went
I'm like,
viral, whatever.
I've never done anything close to that.
You should have her on the show.
I will when she can speak.
Just like baby ASMR and you just have her cooing.
It would probably blow up.
It would totally blow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that having kids in the picture, whether they're your own or somebody else's, always sort of like balances the room. Like you're like, oh, it's not about us because this kid has needs that we automatically need to think about.
They're
or
the star
like
of the show.
Being quiet or being loud or all the things that like these sort of like adult labels and pressures that we put on social situations are sort of thrown out the window with children.
Yep.
And I think it tells a lot about people how they handle the way that kids influence the room.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, like, when you're in a room of adults, everybody, their, like, inner monologue is going off with whatever it is. Like, oh, they're concerned about are other people thinking about them? Do they look okay? Do they feel okay? And then suddenly when there's a baby in the room, it's, like, natural instinct that, like, attention's on the baby then.
Totally.
Yeah.
And when there's nothing to talk about, everyone just goes back to the baby.
Exactly. And then if people, like, don't know where to look, they just
best.
look at the baby. It's awesome. We should just have babies in every room.
Totally.
Do you volunteer your baby?
I volunteer my baby as tribute until such time as she is no longer a child.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Love it. Definitely
in our family situations that will...
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's definitely... Don't you think it's kind of brought that to our family gatherings?
100%. Because we're just, like, fighting over who gets the baby next.
And nobody cares that I'm asleep on the couch.
Exactly.
Because the baby's here.
Perfect scenario for you. It's great. We love it. I mean, she's the best.
She is really amazing. So you grew up where?
Folsom, California.
I find it interesting that you say Folsom because I feel like most people, wherever they graduated from high school, that's where they say they grew up.
I lived in Folsom longer, so I feel like
you identify more with Folsom.
I don't know.
Where were you born?
I feel like I identify more with Lincoln. I was born in Folsom, and then
Kaiser.
I think.
What's the address?
I don't know. One of the Folsom hospitals.
Get out your birth certificate and show it to the camera.
And then, one of the Folsom hospitals, and then grew up in Folsom when I was like 14. My parents moved us to Lincoln, and then I graduated from there. I lived in Folsom longer, but I probably identify more with Lincoln.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you have a big truck?
Oh, I do not have a big truck.
Okay. Tell me about your car.
My car?
And the culture that you and your sister, maybe your whole family has, of naming your cars. Oh, yeah. It takes on a personality.
Yes. Okay, so my first car, more importantly, was the greatest car. It was a 06 Kia Optima.
White.
Her name was Betty White. And my whole family just has white cars. It was like the thing. And so when I was getting a car, I was like, I don't want a white car. I got a white car. Never say never. And so I got this sweet car. It was awesome. And I had to name it. And my sister, your wife, was like, whatever you do, you can't name your car Snow White because my car's Snow White. And I was like, well, that's a dumb name for a car. I didn't even want to name my car that. And then just realized it came to me in a moment, an epiphany, like, the Lord shone the light down on me and he was like, your car's name is Betty White.
Betty White.
And it was a great car. She took me everywhere. And I had this fear for the longest time that if my car died, the real Betty White would die or vice versa.
She's still alive, right?
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry. The real life person, Betty White.
She's still alive. Yes. And so I've since sold Betty White the car and got a new car. It's a sweet little CRV. It gets me around. It's got a lot of rust on it because I bought it in Massachusetts, but that's okay. And
is that from the snow and stuff?
They salt the roads,
gotcha.
Which is not a California thing. But they salt the roads, which just rusts your car. And his name is Bo.
Oh, it's a boy this time.
Yeah, it's a boy car.
Bo spelled how?
Beau. Bo. What's that face?
I just don't understand that spelling, but that's how everyone spells it.
That's just what it is.
It's just like restaurant.
Yeah, I don't like that one. I'm a horrible speller.
I feel like we have a really bad language when it comes to that stuff. Yeah.
For sure.
It's very frustrating, especially when you try to teach other people.
It's not good.
I worked in a kitchen for a while, and the guy there was from Guatemala. He'd only been here like a year or two, and he wanted me to teach him some stuff. And I was like, dude, our language sucks. I'm so sorry. Because he'd be like,
it's not easy.
Why is this way and this is this way? And I'm like, I don't know. They just told me that
That's just what they said.
They just said, this is how it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. I never did well with that in school when they said it is this way just because this is the way it is.
But then here's 10 exceptions to this rule.
So it's not a rule.
So it's not actually a rule.
Yeah.
But we're going to call it a rule.
It's like absolute truth, but not.
Exactly.
I don't get that.
It doesn't make sense.
My next question for you is,
Yes.
you have all these campers who come.
Yeah.
They meet you, right?
Yeah.
You interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
What is the legacy that you want to have with them? Like 20 years from now when they say, I went to camp, there was this crazy girl named Maddie, or really serious, or she was energetic.
Yeah.
What is the legacy that you want
to remember me?
Really?
From camp. Yeah. I think I don't want them to look back on camp and be like, oh my gosh, remember that lady who was on stage? Like, she was crazy. Well, I do like want them to like have a fun experience with me while I'm there. I want them to look back on camp as more than just like me there, you know? So I love what I get to do, and I spend a lot of time on stage and interacting with students. But at the end of the day, I want them to remember the experience they had and like the time they spent with the Lord and the relationships they built with their like friends or their church leaders. I don't want them to remember me.
So you want them to remember the entire experience, not a specific person.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be with your coworkers?
I think with my coworkers, something I love about my job is creating space for my coworkers to be able to do what they do, and just creating opportunities for one another. And so, I had a really cool experience with my previous boss where he just like taught me and led me well, in a way that like I didn't even realize that I was being taught something or like led in a new way, where he just created the space and opened the door and kind of like nudged me through it. And then looking back, I would see like, oh my gosh, that was so cool that you did that for me. And it wasn't some crazy thing of like, hey, I'm going to sit you down and this is exactly what's going to happen. But he just created the space and like made a way for it. And so, yeah, I want people to feel encouraged by me and seen by me, and just like loved and pushed onward, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people who attract leaders and attract bosses, etc., to themselves, where the leader wants to pour in that or direct them in that way or give them that opportunity. There's a lot of people who feel that they never get those nods. And I was speaking to somebody today who was saying that they never feel like anybody's reaching out towards them, that they're always doing the reaching out.
Yeah.
And that they keep getting shut down.
Yeah.
And what would you say to somebody who says, I never catch a break, essentially?
Like in relationships, they don't catch a break?
Or maybe it's job opportunities, or maybe it's maybe it's romantic relationships, maybe it's just friendships, maybe it's business, maybe it's in my church or in my sports team, or I never get picked. I'm the last one picked.
Yeah. I think that's hard because that's so hurtful, right? When you have that, like, especially once you start that narrative in your head, you like constantly see it everywhere, whether it's like small things or big, you notice it.
You create it sometimes.
Yeah. And you sometimes do create it, but, and maybe that is the case. Maybe you are last picked, but in experiencing that and like understanding how that feels, you can ensure that people around you don't feel that way. And while it is hard to be the one who constantly reaches out and the one like seeking other people first, maybe that's a role that you get to take on and ensure that no one else has to feel that.
You can be the one to pick others first.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to shift into asking you about communication. Yeah. Because you do a lot of communicating, right, in your job. And you probably have experienced a lot of different forms of communication, working with people older than you, right? Working with people much younger than yourself.
Yeah.
What is your preferred form of communication? And let's just say in friendships. In friendships, how do you want people to communicate with you?
Yeah. I think like in person is always best. I think one-on-one is probably my favorite, especially when there's food involved. Yeah. I I think group settings create like different dynamics for people where like suddenly they become more insecure or like overly aware of themselves or the situation. And so I think like one-on-one is really great because it just creates like a more intimate setting and you can really spend time with that one person rather than focusing on like other things, the noise of the world. Yeah.
What about when in-person communication isn't possible? Like say someone's reaching out to you to make an appointment.
Yeah.
Or they want to talk to you about their feelings or your feelings or something.
Yeah.
Text, phone call, email.
It's different. For sure.
Zoom's a thing now.
Yeah. I think FaceTime has just brought us all closer together. FaceTime's huge, especially for me, like living across the country from my family. Love FaceTime. And it's interesting too, how like I can have normal phone calls with people for a really long time and like constant phone calls, regular phone calls. And then suddenly you FaceTime and it's like, oh man, I haven't seen you in so long. And there is so much value in like seeing a person's face while you talk to them. And so like over the phone, obviously is all like over the phone, FaceTime is always preferred. I think texting is interesting because it's like, I love that like casual, like constant upkeep with people of like sending each other pictures and things is great. But there is something so much more valuable and intimate, like in hearing someone's voice and seeing their face.
Are there any people who call you on a regular basis that when you see it pop up on your phone, you don't want to answer it?
I don't think so. Sometimes my sister, just because she calls to update me on her day. And so I'm like, well, we did this yesterday. I can call her back later. I never don't want her phone call, but I will sometimes.
Might not be the right time.
Deny her call because I'm like, we'll catch up in 20 minutes anyway.
Oh, that brings up another question. Sorry, this is very much fresh on my mind. So
that's okay.
You are getting all of the you're my first survey candidate.
Great.
Someone calls you. Mm-hmm. You're in a meeting, whatever. You don't answer.
Yes.
You see a missed call. Mm-hmm. That don't leave a voicemail and they don't text you. Do you call them back?
Is their number in my phone? Like I know who they are.
You know who it is.
I'll probably text them first. Say like, hey, what did you need? Just because it's like a way of vetting their phone call so that you like know, is this a 2-hour phone call or is this a 5-minute phone call?
Vetting.
Maybe you don't have time for the 2-hour phone call. Like, what if you're in the middle of doing something and if it's a 5-minute phone call, you're like, yeah, we can do this right now. I'll give you the time. Because I hate feeling like I have to go when someone's trying to tell me something, or I hate the feeling if I'm on the opposite end and I'm like trying to like communicate with someone and I can feel that they're just trying to hang up. And so I'd rather just know ahead of time rather than be like, oh, actually I can't talk right now.
What is the time commitment?
Even though I called you back, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good for anyone.
Do you feel like people try to corner you over the phone versus in a text you can kind of respond when you've had time to think about it? Does that make sense?
Totally.
Like people call you and say, hey, can you meet me right now? And you're like, you have to make a quick decision. Or
I don't ever really experience that, but like your business sometimes is immediate, like work, when people need you at the coffee shop, they need you, right? Mine isn't as urgent. So I don't really ever experience that.
Why do you think the boomer generation hates how much the millennial-ish generation, younger than them, text messages so much? Why do they hate that?
It's a great question. It does feel impersonal. And I think if you grow up with it, like if you grow up being able to text people and having that constant communication, you don't understand necessarily how good it could be or how much better it is if you like could actually have a real conversation with someone.
So you think it would be better if we were calling each other?
Oh, totally. I think there is like value in like an easy, hey, I'm on my way, rather than having to call someone. But I think with like genuine conversation, it's always better over the phone.
Agreed.
Yeah. Until they like create like a sarcastic font or like fonts to show your mood when you're texting, it's just hard to really understand what people are trying to communicate. Yeah.
You can't convey tone.
You can't convey tone through a text message. Well. Yeah.
I feel like really, really great writers of the past could convey tone in text because they used more punctuation and more words and things like that. But now people aren't intelligent enough to read that type of writing, unfortunately.
And we're lazy with our words that we use.
We are very lazy.
We don't use as elaborate
I
vocabulary.
get criticized for using big words.
Like,
but I'm trying
make fun of
harder
you?
and harder to use bigger words than ever.
Yeah.
To stretch my mind.
It's good.
Actually, I think you can keep me accountable to this. I think I'm going to start tweeting like 5 times a week.
Yeah.
The word of the day. So I get like a word of the day in my email inbox.
Love that.
I'm going to try to use that and just write a stupid tweet with it in there.
I appreciate that.
The word. Because I don't remember them. Because I don't use them.
But if you use them creatively, then your brain will remember it. Also, these chairs are not made for short legs. Being honest.
I'm not a huge fan of these chairs.
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, it's not uncomfortable.
When the Proclamation Podcast gets its first sponsor, we can buy some new chairs.
Send in some chairs, people. Show them your love.
Yeah, somebody out there watching from some chair company, we will plug your chairs every podcast if you send us better chairs.
Yes.
Why do you think we started a podcast?
I think kind of what we've been talking about, of like people nowadays use easy ways of communication, of whatever's simplest, whatever's fastest. Let's just get it out there. And we've lost the value in using big words, in communicating in new ways, in telling stories. And so I think that's why you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you think, though, that people are communicating more than ever through social media?
Yeah, but is it communication that's like worth anything? It's almost like empty communication.
Good point.
Where it's like empty calories, where you're putting it out there and it's constant, but is it like filling? Is it doing anything any good? Or is it just verbal diarrhea?
Yeah. Well, I think some people would say it's like, say you spend $500 on a piece of art. Goes on the wall. You look at it. You spend $500 on a tool. You maybe could make some art with that.
Yeah.
Aren't they both valuable?
Yeah. It's just in the way you find the value. I think this is something that I've been talking to some people a lot about lately, is that like some people are just very generous with words, and they're constantly using words, and they're constantly saying something where suddenly their constant stream of words become less valuable. And so when they do say something that's worth any sort of value, it's lost its value because of their constant stream of words. Whereas people who use
the more you say,
words,
the less valuable.
Yeah. And so I think there is a lot to that, especially in this day and age when people are able to constantly put out words and information. It's more valuable when they're not doing that all the time.
Teddy Roosevelt said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." And I think a lot of people are speaking really, really loud, but there's very little behind it.
Exactly.
Someone just asked me some advice for them to give to a friend about opening a coffee shop, which I thought was very odd. Why don't you just give them my number? Why are you this middleman? Are they paying you?
Unnecessary middleman.
Should they be paying me? No, I'm just kidding. There's no money involved, but it was just funny how it started. But this person was seeking advice for their friend who wants to start a coffee shop out of state.
Got it.
Great. And I said, what are they doing now? Do they have experience in coffee? Do they have experience in food service? That's very important. No, but he's building this company, building a handmade product. I won't say the details, but it's a handmade product. Really beautiful. Beautiful products.
Yeah.
Shows me their Instagram. A lot of followers. A lot of cool products.
Love that.
All in the same practice, the same type of work, but different types of products. Very nice. All very beautiful photos. They haven't put out a product in months.
Ooh.
They have not shipped a product to any customer in months.
Interesting.
And the whole goal is to look like they are running this amazing business, shipping out these amazing products, but they're actually not doing anything.
Interesting. Is that because they aren't making an effort, or nobody's ordering them?
They haven't. Oh, they're ordering them, but they have a day job, so they don't have time. But then people are putting in orders, but then the orders are getting kicked back as like, hey, the wait time's super long, and then people are canceling. And so it's sort of just like a cycle.
Yeah.
And I was having a similar discussion with somebody else recently. And they're like, I want to get new customers in my business. And they said, well, what are you doing to retain your existing customers?
Yeah.
They weren't concerned with that.
Oh, no.
And so now they were once I brought it up, but that wasn't, they're like, well, I haven't really been thinking about that.
Yeah.
And it's like the saying, make new friends, keep the old. One is silver, the other is gold. The silver is great. The gold is much better. Keep the friends that you have.
Yes.
Keep those relationships solid, because if you can't, then you won't ever be able to pour into new relationships. If you can't take care of your existing customer, why are you trying to get a new customer?
Exactly.
Why are you trying to build your brand if you have nothing really to offer?
Yeah.
Like work on the products and become an expert in that, build up your inventory, then get new customers. Yes. But now you have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, in this case, of people following you, and you can't even serve them.
Yeah. They're just going to be disappointed.
And they won't come back.
Exactly. It's interesting because, like, why it just is an endless cycle in that way of people constantly being excited and then disappointing, and then you're getting just endless disappointment from your customers.
So I'm going to bring this into a topical realm. Politicians. Literally, if you boil it down,
do that.
They exist to perpetuate their existence in their position. And I think that we have bred up these parts of our society where they only exist to perpetuate their existence. So they should all be executed, right? I'm sorry. Wait, that was for my other podcast.
Whoa.
But that I think is how in history we've gotten to extremist mindsets. Is that, take the Russian people, for example, the wealthy rulers, the czars, just perpetuated their existence by constantly keeping the people down in this low position and taking on all the money, but they weren't growing the country. They weren't improving people's lives. They weren't building things for the people, only for themselves. And so the people said, F this.
No, thank you.
Overthrow you.
Yeah.
You see that in history in different examples where certain people groups weren't concerned with the little guy. And after a while, them perpetuating their existence as the ruler became unacceptable. Yeah. And I believe that we're maybe getting into that today, where people are like, I'm really tired of these people sitting up in this high and lofty place telling us, hey, you need to wear masks, but I don't need to wear masks. Yep. And I don't think people are accepting that anymore.
I don't think so either. And I think it's interesting because I think it comes back down to people want to be seen. And if you're putting people, and obviously as a politician, this is a little bit more difficult because the amount of people that you have to make feel seen are a lot larger. But if you're lumping people together and just putting blanket statements over everyone, then no one feels seen and no one feels valued and no one feels heard. And if you try and do that continuously, then you're helping one group or supporting one group and then not another. And then you can't make everybody happy. You can't show everyone that they're seen. And realistically, they're probably only trying to make people feel seen because they're trying to elevate themselves. I would never want to be a politician. I couldn't do it. I would just say, like, free cheeseburgers for everybody and then vote for me, Maddie B.
You probably get all the votes.
You know what? Let's do it. I'm running for president. Just kidding. No, thank you.
Are you?
Never. I
Nope.
do
First female
still
president?
have a confession. I have a bumper sticker and it says Nick Jonas for president like 2040 or 20 something. I don't know. I'll put it on my
Whenever
car when
he's
the
old
time
enough
comes.
to be president.
Yeah. Bought that when I was like 12. Saving it.
That's a long play for a very great joke.
A really, really great joke.
A really good joke.
It's not that good. I'd vote for him, but that's
For
only
Nick
'cause
Jonas?
I liked his music when I was in middle school, so
Be great headshots.
it would be great headshots.
Yeah, great press conferences.
Yep.
He'd start out with lights, fog machine.
It would just be a bunch of like women who like at the time when he was really popular, the Jonas Brothers were really popular.
They're now voting age.
Like now voting age and like really excited. It's just like a crowd full of women.
I think we could be getting more towards the more like celebrity politicians could be more popular. I mean, could happen more often. Sorry,
That's
not
true.
be more popular, but happen more often.
Yeah. I mean,
Arnold set kind of a new
no, it was
precedent
Reagan.
for that. Yeah, you're right.
Reagan was a movie star.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Say it one more time.
Reagan?
No, that I'm right.
You're right.
Thank you.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Or do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about on the podcast?
I would just like to compliment your shoes. They're pretty cool.
Thank you for them.
You're welcome.
Tell us about my shoes.
Oh, okay. First of all, I am a constant victim.
This is for you, Sean
of
Airy.
Instagram ads. They have me
Victim?
like, oh my gosh, they have me pegged
I
so
actually
well.
have a victim
of like,
story about that.
they know exactly what to advertise to me, and I will purchase it almost every time. So
Yikes.
your shoes, your Star Wars shoes,
May the force be with you.
and you as well.
Thank you.
They were an ad, and I was like, oh man,
Wow.
these are dope. And so of course I go like digging for these Adidas Star Wars shoes, and by the time I get to the Adidas website, every other person on the face of the earth has already purchased all of the shoes in your size. And so lots of
Just
digging.
of this particular one?
No, all of them.
All the Ultra Boosts.
All of any Star Wars shoe sold by Adidas in your
Gone.
size was completely sold out.
Sorry.
I searched, I was on like secondhand shoe websites, like looking for your size. People were selling them for like $300 and $400. And I was like, this just isn't the Christmas present for Luke this year. And then Katie and I, your wife, my sister, went to the mall and we were like, let's just check the stores and see what they have. And we found them. I think it was at Foot Locker. And I go inside and they were just sitting there like a beacon of hope on the bench with all the other shoes. It was a new hope.
Wow.
And we got them for you, and I'm really proud of them. And they're dope.
They are dope. They are extremely comfortable. I'd highly recommend these. This is an ad paid for by Adidas Shoe Company.
And it's like subtly Star Wars. They did have a pair of like high tops that were gold, like C-3PO, which were also really cool. But
I will be going there after this podcast to check and see.
A little aggressive. These ones are like,
And these are kind of on the high end price wise, right?
I got them on sale. I'm going to be honest with you, but they typically are a little bit more pricey.
Pretty expensive shoe.
But to the untrained eye, like they wouldn't know that's Star Wars. They would just be like, oh, that guy has
especially
cool
with
shoes.
how fast I walk.
Exactly. Speed
Just
racer.
kidding. I walk very slow, according to my wife.
Oh, no.
She ditches me at Disneyland. Well, thank you for these. They've been a joy. I wore them specifically because I knew you were going to be on today.
I'm glad.
Yes. I was going to ask you two questions. Now I forget. Oh. So, many, many months ago, we did our first IGTV video.
Yep.
And it was with a young lady who had put up her art, which was really awesome to hear her story and how she did all that. But you are the first female on the podcast.
Wow.
How do you feel about that?
I feel honored and proud of you for recognizing that.
Of course.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I have been trying to get some ladies on the podcast, but scheduling. Also,
Difficult.
podcast a little intimidating. And I don't have as many guy to girl relationships now that I'm married, and so
makes sense.
I'm just working on my pool of people that I can ask.
Totally. And I like, now that I think about it, I don't think I listen to a lot of podcasts run by women, which I should probably work on. But female voices are, it's like a thing that like they train female politicians to like deepen their voice.
What?
Yeah. Margaret Thatcher had to do that. Like that's part of the reason why they like had her voice, or why her voice was the way it was, because high pitch people like tune out more often or something. It's like a thing. And not just like
what did you
men.
Say? Just kidding.
People oh, I see what you did there.
Sorry.
It's just gonna be you talking the whole podcast. No one actually is gonna hear what I say.
Can't pick up your wavelength.
And I actively try to do this even when I'm like on stage, or like when I used to run recreation. I would like really try to like tone my voice down, just because it's a thing. People don't, or they like more often tune out a higher pitched voice.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just purely like a sound wave thing.
I think so. I don't know science.
Me neither. I believe in
science.
Great film.
A classic.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk to a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
And different backgrounds, different people who identify different ways and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Hear everybody's voice. Make people feel heard.
You can talk as high as you want.
I'm just going to talk like this for the rest of your podcast.
Welcome to my podcast.
Also, the number of times that Katie and I have sat in these exact chairs with the microphones off and had our own fake podcast. It wouldn't be funny to anyone except for us.
It would be amazing. You guys should do it. People would be just
so confused because it would be inside jokes and movie quotes the whole time. And no one would get it.
Sometimes it is hard to keep up with you guys.
We just talk too fast and in our own language. So.
Yeah. That happens with my siblings and I as well. Usually it's Rush Hour 2 quotes. Greatest movie ever made.
I've actually never seen any of the Rush Hour films. And the look of disappointment in your eyes right now, I'm really sorry.
It's more like watching people's homes get hit by a tsunami.
Oh.
Just great sadness and
just
feeling like
sorrow.
There's nothing I can do to help.
You could show me the film.
That's a great start. It has been a wonderful time here on the Proclamation Podcast. Shout out to Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. We will now be going to watch Rush Hour 2. Thank you, Maddie Brown, for being on the Proclamation Podcast.
Of course. It's been a blast. Thanks for having me.
It has been a blast. Yeah. So if you got this far in the video, please like and subscribe. We would love to see this podcast grow. So please share it with your friends and family and circle as well. And we will be having more genuine, funny, deep, knowledgeable, intelligent, very lengthy, loquacious podcasts in the future. Cheers.